South Korea's largest island of Jeju is trying to reverse the decline of its language, Jeju-eo. Once an inseparable part of the island's identity, the language is now threatened with extinction, replaced by the use of Standard Korean. Well, CNA's Lim Yun-suk with this report from Jeju.
The volcanic island of Jeju is located nearly 500 kilometers south of Seoul. Because of its isolation, it developed its own traditions, distinct from the rest of Korea. Like the Haenyeo, or sea women. They harvest seafood, diving as deep as 30 meters without scuba gear. The first records of the Haenyeo date back to the 17th century. Then, many men died at sea, and women took over as breadwinners. Today, the women, who are mostly elderly, are among the last remaining speakers of the island's vanishing language, Jeju-eo.
아이고 많이 없어졌지. 우리 손주들 사기 제주말을 뭘로 주? 제주말을 몰라.
어떻게 대화해요?
그래도 알아듣긴 해. 잘 쓰지는 않아도 다 알아들어. 할머니들 하는 거.
Some reports say there are at most about 10,000 native speakers left on the island, though the Jeju Dialect Institute thinks there could be as many as 40,000. Its researchers conduct and record interviews in Jeju-eo with the elderly every week. UNESCO designated Jeju-eo as critically endangered in 2010, prompting renewed efforts from the Jeju government to protect the language from being lost. And this is one way of how that's been done in the city of Jeju. A Korean speaker won't be able to read these signs in Jeju-eo. While both languages descended from the Korean alphabet Hangul, which was created in the 15th century, they evolved very differently. As connectivity improved, Jeju Islanders began to learn Korean. Today, they mostly speak Standard Korean with a bit of Jeju-eo vocabulary. But public curiosity is helping to drive a revival of sorts.
사용되는 언어하고는 많이 달라요. 드라마에서도 그 제주도 방언이 나오면 자막이 달려요.
군대에서 암호로 쓸 때도 제주 사투리를 썼다고 하더라고요. 그 정도로 알아듣기가 힘들어요.
The centuries-old language has found an unlikely ally, social media, where it is gaining a growing following. YouTuber Kim Hong-gyu, a Jeju local, says his channel took off after he started posting videos on Jeju-eo.
일단 제주어를 컨텐츠로 한번 해봤는데 사람들이 일단 너무 좋아해줬고 그리고 하다 보니까 저도 이 사람들 댓글이라던가 아니면 반응을 보면서 제주어에 대한 사람들이 관심이 많고 이 제주어가 좀 소멸이 돼가는 것에 좀 사람들도 많이 아쉬움을 느껴 하는구나. 아니 여기 용태
The 29-year-old goes around the island talking to elderly people about their childhood and everyday things in Jeju-eo. The videos he takes are invaluable records of the fading language for the next generation, where much of the efforts to keep Jeju-eo alive are focused on. Elementary schools on the island have to teach Jeju language and culture for at least 11 hours a year, under requirements put in place this year. This is Shin Jeju Elementary School, one of the largest on the island. It was selected as a model for Jeju language education this year. The school incorporates Jeju-eo into regular classes, games, and other activities, rather than adding special language classes.
제주어 교과만 따로 이렇게 분리해서 하다 보면 애들이 제주어에 대해서 실증을 느끼기도 하고 또 다른 부담감으로 작용을 하게 돼서 교과와 창의적 체험 활동과 함께 그리고 동아리 활동 이런 데서 애들이 자연스럽게 제주어를 익힐 수 있도록 하는 것이 바람직하다고 생각을 합니다.
For the people of Jeju, their language is a source of pride.
필요하죠. 당연히 필요하죠. 제주를 살리기 위해서. 왜냐하면 제주 방언이 없으면 제주도에 의미가 없잖아요.
But Jeju's heyday is likely to be over. As the pool of elderly speakers shrinks and more young islanders move to the mainland, it remains to be seen if the Jeju language will live on or fade away.
Oh, to help us better understand what Jeju-eo is all about, let's bring in CNA's Lim Yun-suk in Seoul. Yun-suk, first up, I just want to pick up on this stat, which was in your story, and that elementary schools, they teach Jeju language for 11 hours per year under requirement, right? At least. That doesn't seem like a lot. So I'm wondering, just how serious are the government and the community about revitalizing this Jeju language?
Well, yes, it is true. It's 11 hours a year. But, in general, I think it's just that the majority of parents and children on the island are not really strongly pushing to keep the Jeju language alive. Because I got a sense that even the Jeju metropolitan government itself only started taking real interest in this after Jeju-eo was designated as an endangered language by UNESCO. And so it was only from then that they started to, getting those elementary schools to teach the language and culture to the young South Koreans on the island. But, most parents here in learning Jeju-eo, the language, it's not that important because here in South Korea, most of the schools, the classes are all really geared towards doing well in the state exam in high school so that their children can enter one of the prestigious universities here in the capital, Seoul. And so, many parents don't think that spending that extra time on learning Jeju-eo is good for the kid and would instead prefer them learning something else that is going to help them do well in that state exam. And in fact, I was talking to someone at that Jeju Elementary School when I was doing this, which teaches 11 hours a year to their students. And apparently there are some parents there who even think that that's too much and that 11 hours should be shortened. And so also another interesting fact is that Jeju-eo, even if it's not the native Jeju language, it has that different accent dialect to the standard Korean spoken here in Seoul. And so many Korean parents would prefer that their children speak standard Korean instead of Jeju-eo because the children could face discrimination or, be seen as, a country girl or a country boy and not the city girl. And I'm not just talking about Jeju Islanders, but most people here who speak with a different dialect from, say, other provinces, they also share the same sentiment. Like, for example, people from the south in Daegu City in North Gyeongsang Province, the first thing that many of them do, and so do the Jeju Islanders when they come here to Seoul, is to try and pick up the standard Korean as quickly as they can and get rid of the dialect, they grew up speaking in their hometown so that nobody will catch the fact that they're out from somewhere else and not here in the capital, Seoul.
So you mentioned that if, people are heard speaking Jeju-eo, for instance, they might face some kind of discrimination. And yet, we've seen the videos as well going viral, of these guys speaking Jeju-eo. So then to what extent do you think is public curiosity in the Jeju culture actually perhaps giving a boost to the younger generation? Do you think that's going to change?
Well, the discrimination I talked about are people who used to live in Jeju Island, but they decided to migrate to the capital, Seoul. And so they've decided since they're going to be living here, they might as well try and, pick up the standard Korean. But as we saw in that story, there is a growing interest in Jeju culture, the language, especially among the young people there. And that's why you saw that YouTuber, Kim Hong-gyu, he changed his YouTube content to everything related to Jeju Island. And he was saying that, there's really nothing special about what he does, but Koreans have become fascinated by the interviews that he does with the people there, especially the elder Koreans who have been living there for decades, because they're just really talking about everyday things, what they did when they were young or how they celebrated traditional holidays. Because Jeju has its own unique ways of how they do that. Also, he introduces Jeju food, also recommended, where to go and when in Jeju, because Jeju Island is a well-known tourist destination for Koreans. And so people go there very often, but they only start to realize now that there is more to this Jeju language and the culture than they had known before. And so there is this interest growing to learn more, but, I don't think it is to the extent that can help revive the Jeju language and its culture and get more people wanting to speak the language.
That's quite a shame. What about the older folks, though? I mean, are they pushing hard to pass on the language and culture so it doesn't die off?
I don't really think so. I mean, there are adults, say, putting up theater performances, speaking the Jeju language and trying to get more people to be interested in this. Or you do have adults reading more of the children's books to their grandchildren, hoping that they can raise some kind of interest. But overall, I think the Jeju elderly people I spoke to in Jeju were saying that their grandchildren don't even speak Jeju-eo, although they might understand it a bit. And so the elderly generation will have to start speaking to them with some of the standard Korean and not be able to use the native Jeju-eo, because then they wouldn't be able to communicate even with their grandchildren.
Oh, well, many thanks for that story and that report. CNA's Lim Yun-suk speaking to us live from Seoul.